Fairfield. Welcome to the 50th episode. Yes, the 50th episode without getting canceled of Fairfield 2.0, although somebody did point out earlier it is very hard to get canceled on public access. But here we are 50 episodes later, and we have quite the crew here today. We have Randy West, who oversees WOB and is a director extraordinaire, actor extraordinaire, singer extraordinaire. What else extraordinaire?
I don't know. God bless you for that.
We also have Jonathan Christopher, who is with us for Plaid Tidings. And he has all sorts of, he's going to be in Cabaret. We're going to be talking about Cabaret. And all sorts of stuff this coming summer. And we'll talk about that in our joint discussion. And also we have Lyric Benson. There's a lot of stuff to talk about with Lyric Benson, including Cabaret. So we'll talk about that, and let's just dive in. Randy, what news do you have from the front?
Well, that we're opening Cabaret in a week. Actually, this week. We open it on the 29th, on Friday. And we're doing 6 shows at the Sondheim. We're doing Friday and Saturday at 7:30. Sunday is Easter, and for anybody who knows anything about Cabaret, it's about the 1930s Germany and Nazis. So we didn't think that it was a great Easter celebration. So we're going to skip the Sunday for Easter and then come back the following week, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, with the one matinee being the Sunday when we close at 2. All the other shows are at 7:30. And we were very fortunate that actually Paul Prather, who produces our shows, but is also on our board, he brought up at a board meeting that we were discussing Chicago, believe it or not, which is the other kind of famous Kander and Ebb show. And Paul said, I really like Cabaret. I think it's, in terms of subject matter, it's a more profound musical. What about Cabaret? And I said, well, let's do some investigation. Let's see what's up. And what was really interesting is that I assumed we'd have to do an older version of Cabaret, because the version that we are doing is the 1998 version, which was the revival, and it was rethunk by Sam Mendes and Rob Marshall, and it won the Tony as Best Revival. It won the Tony for Alan Cummings, who played the MC, and also for Natasha Richardson, who played Sally Bowles, and also Ron Rifkin, who the only way I remember Ron Rifkin is if you watch Law and Order Special Victims Unit. He plays the kind of short, hairy, very fuzzy defense attorney that goes up against them all the time, and he's a character actor, and he played the older Jewish fruit seller, and he won a Tony, as well did the directors. And so that version, even though it came out in 1998, has been on tour professionally since then. And the professional tour did play Iowa twice, kind of coming and going. So It's been in Iowa for a night or 2 nights. But that version just became available to professional companies about a month ago.
Wow.
And so when we were in conversations with Tams Witmark, it's not even on the Tams Witmark website. I mean, it doesn't even... It's
the place where you would...
Right, where you would license it. It's not even listed as an option yet, because technically it isn't an option quite yet. I mean, we got a hold of them and said, is there any chance that we could do this new version? And they said, yeah. So I had done the old version of Cabaret, which is the Hal Prince version, who kind of conceived it from the beginning, and liked it. But this is a real rethink of the show. And Cabaret itself is kind of interesting, because in the 60s, when Hal Prince did it, it was kind of one of the first concept musicals. Now, Hal Prince in the 70s was going to go into directing he directed all the 70s musicals of Sondheim, and Sondheim had a new musical every 2 years that won every award it could win. But this was in the 60s, and the idea of doing a musical set in 1930s Berlin, where the Kit Kat Club is a metaphor for decadence and what's going on in Germany, which is kind of what allowed Nazism to come in and take over. And then you have a young couple in the middle, Cliff and Sally, and then you have an older couple, the woman who runs the boarding house, and the man that she falls in love with, who's the older fruit seller, who happens to be Jewish. So you've got the 2 couples in the middle, then you've got the Kit Kat girls, and it's all run by an MC who kind of controls the show and controls the Kit Kat Club. Well, that was Joel Grey in the original, and he won the Tony, and the show won a bunch of Tonys, and it was pretty out there for the early 1960s. But then in the 70s, Bob Fosse made the film. And most people, if they know Cabaret, probably know Bob Fosse's film. Well, by the 70s, we'd had the sexual revolution. So things they couldn't do in the 60s, they could do in a film in the 70s. And really, Liza Minnelli was known, but it made a full-blown star out of Liza Minnelli, who played Sally Bowles. Joel Grey reprised his role from the original. They both won Oscars. The show won the Oscar for Best Film. Bob Fosse won the Oscar for Best director. And what Fosse did is the musical has book numbers, which are numbers that take place in the story. I mean, like in the apartment, in the living room, whatever. Right. And then there are numbers that are the cabaret numbers that basically comment on the rest of the book. Right. Well, Fosse cut all of the book numbers. I mean, all together. There's one song that's sung without accompaniment in a beer garden, which is the Nazi anthem, Tomorrow Belongs to Me. Right. He kept that. All the other music that takes place is in the cabaret.
And which makes sense, because then it adds that level of, and I'm imagining Bob Fosse wanted this, the realism. Right. It's people not just breaking into song.
It quit being a movie musical, and it became a movie with music. Yeah. And in that sense, it's a great example of I don't have problems when somebody like Rob Marshall adapts Chicago from the original play to the movie musical to find a concept to make that work. Yeah. And I think sometimes they miss the mark. But in terms of needing to find a way to take two very different art forms and make something work in both of them, I think you have to be open to adaptation and change to make that happen. So Bob Fosse made a great movie. Yeah. And then what happened here is when Mendes started working on it in London, and Alan Cummings was playing Hamlet at the time, and he was rehearsing for the, there you go. He's playing Hamlet, and he's rehearsing for the MC, and this version is more raw.
That's what I was going to ask you. What's the difference between the two mainly?
It has the book numbers back in. Uh-huh. It has a different look. I mean, literally, when they brought it over to New York, Rob Marshall and Sam Mendes did it together. So it was co-directed, and then Rob Marshall choreographed it. New orchestration, and the orchestration sound terrific. Yeah. We just heard the band last night, and it's a live band and great players.
Oh, great.
But the idea was a lot of things changed. Christopher Isherwood wrote I Am a Camera, which is the book that then became the play, that then became the book part of Cabaret. Christopher Isherwood's a gay guy. And he, as things progressed, he came further and further out of the closet. But, I mean, when he wrote the book in Germany, he was actually burning his own diaries because he was afraid if somebody found out the truth, that it could be damning for him. So he was writing kind of and I mean literally in a gray zone when he was there. When he came back over here, it became a little less gray. Then when it came out in the book, at one point he wrote a foreword to the book that said, I was a gay man. I went to Berlin for boys. That's not in the book, technically, because that was too racy for the book at that time. So when they created the show in the 1960s, the only way they thought they could tie this together is Cliff and Sally are a heterosexual couple. Right. I mean, they're a wild bohemian couple that meets in Berlin, but she gets pregnant. There's no doubt in the world that he made the baby. Because the 60s wasn't ready for anything other than that. I mean, the MC was crazy and the Kit Kat girls were sexy, but they felt they needed a storyline that everybody could relate to in the middle of the musical.
Who was in the 75 musical? Was it 75? Wait, what year did that come out?
It was the early 60s.
The musical. The musical, film version.
Yeah, the film version, it was...
72.
72,
yes, 72, and that was...
I wanted to ask, is it Michael York?
Michael York.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you old enough to remember Bert Convey?
Only from Love American Style and things like that.
Shows.
I think. Yeah,
he was the original Cliff, who was kind of
the Partridge Family.
Who was kind of white British, but played it absolutely straight because it was straight. Fosse made them bisexual in the movie. Is that both Sally and Cliff were sleeping with. Well, it was a character named Max that they created for the movie. But at one point, they both admit that they're both sleeping with Max, and he did a couple of. Artsy menage a trois things with all three people in the movie. And for this, in this version, finally, you really believe that that Cliff, who's played by Robert Kemp, who's a great talent for us, with you, Robbie, a couple of times, he's a gay man. And he meets Sally Bowles, Sally Bowles is his force of nature. She just kind of moves in and takes over. And
we're going to get to the force of nature part in a moment or two.
But in this version, you get the idea that he's really a gay guy that really likes Sally Bowles, and Sally Bowles, they have a good time together, and then somewhere along the line, they actually sleep together. But it wasn't like it was planned by him, probably planned by her, not necessarily by him. But when she turns up and says she's pregnant, he originally says, "What are you going to do?" And she says, "Well, I don't know, the usual thing." And as they get talking, finally in the middle of that, he goes, "Oh my God, I could be the father." and she goes, "Well, true, but I mean, so in this version, and she goes on. She said, but she shows there's quite a list, and so they allow that. I think that the relationship between Cliff and Sally is much more interesting in this version than it used to be. And then you have the very tender love story. Margaret Clare, my beloved wife, plays the older woman who runs the boarding house, and Brendan Thomas, who's a dear friend of WOB, comes back and he plays the older fruit vendor. And theirs is the tender, sweet story. Sally and Cliff are the crazy. And then what they did in this, and we even went a step farther, is that Jonathan's character drives the whole evening. That he's in every book scene. That somewhere or another, while they're doing the book scene, either functionally he does something, he has lines, he sometimes dances with people, whatever he does, he's in every book scene. And then when it goes into the cabaret to comment on that, he does the cabaret scene. So
the Joel Grey role has basically
expanded.
Yes. Yeah, wonderful.
So that's a big difference.
Nice. Let me ask you, Jonathan Christopher, tell us a little something about yourself.
I was born and raised in Bermuda. So a little bit different than, snow outside here in Iowa.
It stops with the snow already, right?
Oh my gosh, it's crazy.
Spring.
I know, if only. And I did my studies at the University of Michigan and up at McGill University in Montreal in opera. But I was born and raised doing theater. My father's in theater in Bermuda. My brother is actually on Broadway doing Motown the Musical.
Motown the Musical?
Yes. And he was just in.
And what did it do in its first week?
It made $1 million in its first week of previews, and not many shows get to do that.
Nice.
Hopefully our show will make $1 million.
Oh, there you go.
2-day opening weekend.
Come on. Yes. We're looking for $1 million.
Yes.
I think one of the great things I saw at Plaid Tidings that you were in, and one of the great things is the tight harmony, the beautiful tight harmony that you and the other three had. Ryan and Evan and
Chaz.
Sorry, Chaz. Love you.
Chazmanian.
I thought that was beautiful. You guys really had it tight like you were a vocal group.
It was great. In a way, it was a very surreal experience to have so many talent. Well, so many, 4, 5, 6 of us, essentially, just come together and create this piece where we're on the stage the whole time. Yeah. We put water in various holes behind the stage, so whenever we had a quick second, we just run and grab a sip of water and then keep on doing the show.
But I'll tell you one of the things, as somebody that was just an observer, and this doesn't always happen. It happens in moments, but they were not only so tight in their harmony, their pitch was so perfect. Yeah. They would hit, and it would just explode in overtones, that you would hear overtones and undertones.
Yeah, when it sinks right in, it's like it could break a building. Yeah.
So it's like, rather than hearing 4 tones, you're hearing this huge sound out of 4 guys. And they had some of those moments in every show, but for me sitting in the audience, that's very rare that you have 4 people that are that in tune with each other, let alone singing in 4 parts. It was pretty exciting.
Right. Yeah, and I'm imagining that it affected everybody in the audience in the same way, like those moments that are like,
we could feel it too.
Yeah,
all of a sudden, the very last performance, we were singing the last song, "Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas."
Yeah,
and the aura and the energy that we just got from each other. All of a sudden, everybody's crying.
Goosebumps.
All of us, the 4 of us were. Sherry at the piano was crying.
I'm sure
he
was
always bawling.
I cry all the time.
But it was a great experience. And Ryan, Chaz, and Evan all knew each other. I knew Chaz and Sherry, the music director, from working with them previously in opera, and they invited me to the project, and we all just clicked from the get-go.
It was great.
And had a wonderful time. And so it's a joy to be back here.
Wait till you see him as the MC.
What are your thoughts about your role? How do you relate to, I'm going to forever call it the Joel Grey character. But how do you,
I saw the movie for the first time, actually, just a couple weeks ago. And Joel Grey is very demonic in it. He's just this little man with this very, very pale makeup, these weird lips that just looks at the TV the whole time. And
which is exactly how you're playing it, right?
Exactly. Except I'm
Or
like
not.
7 feet taller than he is. No, but he gets to play with the audience, and he's I think the only character that gets to have the fourth wall broken the whole time.
Yeah.
And so he's able to yell at the audience, he's able to yell at the characters, push them and move them and maneuver them into these various situations. And that's to have that amount of control on stage, it's freeing.
Is there something Randy, is there something you discovered about this, your production of this? Is there something you discovered about the musical that when you saw it finally, after doing all the direction, all of the with the casting and the staging and all of that, is there something you discovered about this that you might not have even understood before until you saw it in front of you through your lens?
Many things, actually. And well, having worked with me, that I don't lock a musical. I mean, we're still exploring what we're doing every time we do it. And I want them in the moment, and I want them to react, not just to act. And I think we're still discovering many things about this. But the whole first act is basically setting up the characters and the story, and you're getting to know the people. And then right toward the end of the first act is when Cliff, unbeknownst, starts smuggling money for the Nazis, which is how he gets kind of sucked into the George Kelly Ernst drags him over to the dark side without him knowing that he's really there yet. And then at the end of the first act is the first. So there's a number of money that's about making choices about, compromises over money and how money causes. That's really the first kind of angry number in the show. I mean, the Kit Kat numbers are sexy and whatever, and they do comment on the aesthetically on what's going on. But money is a really distinct. And then after that, there's an engagement party for the older couple, and during that is when Ernst, who is a Nazi, he takes off his coat and you see the emblem for the first time. Clifford is shocked that this guy that is his friend that he's been doing things for is a Nazi, and when he finds out that the older man is a Jew, of course he's storming out of the fruit shop. He doesn't even want to be in his fruit shop, and Frau Kost, who's played by Natalie Standard, says, no, wait, this song's for you, and they start singing Tomorrow Belongs to Me, which is this anthem, and at the time. Animal or nature metaphors were really strong in Germany. And we have been so lucky in this show to have Sherry Rhodes, who was our musical director, who was an opera musical director in Germany for 15 years. So she's totally fluent in the language. So she's doing all our dialect coaching, but she has such a deep understanding of the German culture and heritage that so she's really helped us connect with that material. And so here are all these random Germans, from being Kit Kat girls to being a hooker to being whatever, that within this number suddenly the whole German culture comes up. And the people that are outside that, like the Jews or the Americans or the people from London, she's just lost. Sally is so apolitical, she has no idea what's going on. The people that do know what's going on are put off by this huge thing. Gareth, my son. Gareth West.
Gareth West
plays the Nazi youth who starts this singing. And I have to tell you, the first time he walked out of a dressing room in a black Nazi uniform with the swastika, I thought his mother was going to fall over. She was so aghast at what our son looked like as a Nazi. But he appears at the top of this thing, and then at the end, all the men do this. The first time that you see this, and that ends Act 1. Yeah. Then Act 2 is all the resolution. The marriage breaks up because she's afraid that she can't rent her rooms because somebody throws a rock and breaks the window at the fruit stand, and the relationship. Sally and Cliff are trying to play boy and girlfriend, and it isn't working as well as it should. She gets pregnant. So he's going to take her back to Philadelphia. She doesn't want to go back to Philadelphia, so their whole relationship doesn't work out at the end. What?
Pennsylvania.
Thank you.
Not Minnesota either, which I almost said in rehearsal. I was like, you're taking me to Minnesota. Wait, no, you're not.
So there's an intensity that that happens in the second act, where you've gotten to know these characters, the actors have gotten to know these characters, and then they play these very moving moments, and then the end of the show. I mean, in this the end of the show for Bob Fosse is an anthem to Liza Minnelli just belting Cabaret. I mean, she comes out and she does such a version of Cabaret that you look at that and you go, well, Sally's going to be fine. She can sing anywhere. I mean, she can go have a career wherever. Well, in this version, Sally has a complete mental breakdown trying to do Cabaret.
All right.
I mean, so what you get is that, her life is not solved, and it's not good. And this play ends with some really strong statements about if you see something horrible and you do nothing about it, it's the same as condoning what you saw.
Beautiful.
So I think that I love musical theater that's about something. And this really, I said people are really, there are a lot of people in town really excited about this. You're either going to love it or you're going to hate it. I don't think you're going to fall in the middle.
Sally Bowles, aka Lyric Benson. I don't even know what question to ask you. Okay, not Minnesota. But what are your thoughts on the character you play?
Well, it's a very fascinating character because, she comes from kind of a middle upper class family in England, and then she moves to Berlin with a girlfriend before the show starts, and she ends up kind of staying there because she wants to be basically in the movie business and eventually get to Hollywood. And she's just very focused on being, in the party scene, enjoying kind of the social activities which are kind of scandalous in Berlin at the time. And she just drags Cliff into it, and he loves it too because it's just, he says it's so tawdry and terrible, I think.
Well, youthful experimentation, another
Yes, exactly.
another definition.
So she's pretty wild. When you first meet her, she's sleeping with the club owner and all this kind of stuff, and before she gets fired, and basically, I just love her character because I just love the transformation that she goes through. She start out and she's just kind of very superficial and carefree, and then by the end, her eyes are kind of opened. It's like that moment in life. I think many people have probably had this experience where you're just kind of floating along, and then something happens, and then it's as if a veil is lifted, and you suddenly see things in a completely different light.
Have you had that experience in life?
I would say so. I mean, I've had, not to get into it, but I lived through September 11th, in New York. A good family friend of ours passed away. That was one time when something like that happened. It's okay. And then I actually saw a dear friend of mine was killed in front of me. So this is such a sad thing. So that's another time where it kind of was like that. And
just also your whole NYU experience. At some point,
NYU.
She was a film studies student. She was really she was on a very...
Say more.
But you were in a huge path that suddenly at one point you just had some kind of revelation and said, I don't want to do this.
That's actually true. That's actually how I got into spirituality. I was at NYU. I was in their screenwriting program, as Randy was saying. And I was doing very well. I was with the seniors my sophomore year. I was, really excelling. And yet at the same time, I felt this complete lack and wondering what was the point of life. And I was very unhappy and tired, and, just life sucked. So,
what year is this about, by the way?
I guess this would be 2002.
Okay.
And then I came back to LA, and I was gonna, my screenwriting teachers basically told me to go and try to sell a screenplay that I had written. So I did that, and the people loved my screenplay. They said, this is so great, it's so well written, but this will never sell, because it was about like Van Gogh and all of the post-expressionistic painters in France, and it was kind of like a indie movie, and they were just like, we just aren't interested in something like this. We want you to write something like Road Trip. And at that point in my life, I just thought, I was 19 and I was kind of snotty, I guess. And so I was just like, well, if I'm going to sell my soul, I'll just do it when I need the money. So that was my actual famous quote that I kept saying over and over again. But But now I could probably
stop
write
you?
that.
Did you sell your soul?
No, I did
No,
not.
you did not.
I did
Okay,
not. I
wonderful.
moved to Boone with my parents and got 2 cows, and
Oh, wow.
and I learned to meditate.
You learned to meditate. Who are your parents again?
My parents are Robbie Benson and Carla DeVito.
My gosh.
And if you know either one of them, you were saying you are the genetic match of your 2 parents.
This is
I
pretty
think
amazing.
in personality too. Actually, I was thinking about that.
Oh my gosh. I by the way, your dad was in probably one of my favorite movies ever, One to One.
One-on-one.
You
Yeah,
know, he wrote that.
And then you're right, Randy, you told me recently, it's like, oh my God, that was so good.
How old was he when he wrote that?
I think he was 20. I'm not exactly sure.
I think he was below 20.
He could have been 17.
I think he
don't
was
know.
17. That's what he told
I-
me. So.
That's true.
That had one other little connection to your father, which is when I was 15, Joe Brooks, I think it was Joe Brooks, who recorded a record with your dad called Hey Everybody, came through the music company that I was working for after school. Cashman and West were producing Jim Croce at the time, and they had a music company that I was working for after school, and they were kind of mentoring me and all that. They brought the Robbie record through their company and sold it to Bell Records at the time. It was Bell, and it has a dubious honor of being the last Bell Records single. So I don't know what that says, but it's also the first Arista record single. So it's kind of both. So it launched Arista. Your dad launched Arista.
Well, my mom did the very first MTV New Year's bash, so she did that as well. I think my parents have done a couple of them.
Carla DeVito, her mom, was on one of the most famous original music videos. I mean, she was singing with Meatloaf at the time, and yes. the Paradise on the dashboard.
Paradise on the dashboard.
She's the sexy girl in the music video. Is Lyric's mom.
That's my mama.
Do you think you get all the talents and genetics and all of that from them, or did you bring a little something of your own into the mix here?
That's nice. Well, I don't know. I mean, is it? I think definitely my parents. You're the combination of your DNA but I do,
you being
of course,
hybrid.
Of course. I do believe that of course when you come in you have a soul and you're who you are. But it is a thing I feel that we speak about the word dharma, or life purpose, that you come into this life for. And it's very funny. I told Randy, I was like, well, this is really confirming that I really want to do this, at least on a greater level than I have been in the past.
Well, and I would say as somebody who's directed all 3 of them, both parents and Lyric, they're all not only talented, they're smart as a whip, all 3 of them. And Lyric, when we started this process, I said, Sally ultimately has to be somebody that when she walks into a room, everybody knows she walks into the room. I mean, that was important to her. And I said, we are going to incrementally get there. I said, you just have to trust in the process, and we'll get there together, and you need to ultimately be fearless. And I can tell you there isn't a thing that I've asked Lyric to do that she didn't jump in with both feet. And I think her portrayal of Sally, is probably unlike anybody else. I mean, she did her homework. She's making really good internal choices. She trusts her instincts. I'm there to kind of cheerlead, but I mean, it's mostly all Lyric, and she's finding. It's really easy. You can dislike Sally Bowles. She does stuff that when you look at it on the offside, you say that's off-putting. I would
never dislike Sally Bowles. That's okay.
But you could. Sally Bowles could be bitchy, but there isn't anything bitchy about Lyric's interpretation. You really want her to succeed, and you're very sad when she doesn't, because in this version it doesn't go so good for Sally.
It's okay not to be bitchy.
If you don't love her, the thing is, I mean, at least this is when I made conscious choices, because if you don't care about her, then by the end you're like, get rid of this girl, You're just like, Cliff, get out of Berlin, adios, and you gotta kind of feel, because people. It's so funny. I almost said this line, but people are just people, which is one of Sally's lines in it. And there's so much, so much depth and to every human being, and the choices that they make and everything. It just, her character, I don't know. You just have to really care about her. So.
Well, and the same thing with the nuanced performance. Say, they've given the MC the ability. What's your ballad that you do in the second act that just makes me cry?
Oh God, I don't care much.
Yeah,
so beautiful.
And that was just added to this version of the show. It was originally written for Cliff way back when, and it got cut. And he comes out and he actually cradles Sally Bowles and dances with her when she's at this really terminal choice in her life, and he sings this, and its roots are absolutely French cabaret, not German cabaret, but it's this gorgeous ballad. And so I think they've given your character also a lot of nuance that didn't used to be there before.
I think the whole show, yeah.
The whole show. I can't wait to see this, because there's always, your tendency is you tend to you bring out the emotional, either nuances or subtext or conscience of all your musicals. Everything that I've ever seen you do.
Thank you.
And Into the Woods, for instance, that's a masterpiece. I saw that and I'm like, wow, I can't. I'm weeping when I'm leaving the theater. But I wanted to come back to Lyric for one more second about your theater acting, because you like performing on the stage. I mean, this is like second nature to you now, right? And you work really well with Randy.
It is. Although Randy has been very patient and kind with me, because this is really the first time that I have done this in several years. I graduated from MUM and I was part of a coherence creating group for world peace, and I had a very inward life. And then I made this album, Lyrics, Love, Light, Revolution.
That's where I was going.
Yes, with my dad. He did all the music, and my mom produced it, and I wrote all the lyrics based on my experiences and consciousness over that chunk of time. And it's a pop rock crazy.
It's got the drum loops, and it's got the sort of exotic or international instruments and stuff.
Yes,
nice.
World beat stuff. It's really great. It's available at everybody's.
And on that Amazon.
And on Amazon and iTunes under Lyric Benson or Lyrics Love Light Revolution or lyricslovelightrevolution.com.
Lyricslovelightrevolution.com.
Yes.
Nice.
But anyway, so it very much is second nature. When I was, I think 3 years old, I was in black patent leather shoes, never reflect up with my parents, and we have
Catholic school, great.
We have this very funny story, because I'm kind of a workaholic, and so is my dad, and there's a story that I had a fever of like 103, and they put me to bed and they said, Lyric, just sleep, it's okay. And then my parents are doing the show, and they look off in the wings, and they see me, and I'm in my costume, and I guess I got myself all dressed and ready, and went to my spot, because I heard the music, and I was ready to come on and play my part. And it's just that's kind of my whole life. I think that's a funny story, so it is second nature.
Second nature.
And the way this happened was Robbie and Carla asked me because I also do television stuff, asked me if I would create her music videos for her album, which is how we first met. And so we were setting up to do the music videos, and in the middle of that, what she was saying is, I want more performance experience. I want to perform live in front of people more. And so that opened up that whole conversation, and kind of between Lyric and her parents and we finally came back to saying, in for a penny, in for a pound. How'd you like to play Sally Bowles? So that's how
and I was like, whoa, okay.
Wow, I'm really looking forward to this. I can't wait to see all of you guys, and then what you've done with this. Yeah, and one more time, what are the dates?
We opened I should tell you, this is really fun. We do the 29th and the 30th here, which is Friday, Saturday of this week. Then next week, we're Thursday, and Thursday is Everybody's Thursday, where tickets are reduced in price. And then we play Friday, Saturday, Sunday at 7:30. And then we close at 2 o'clock on that Sunday matinee. And then we take the whole show, break it down, load it into a truck, and take it to the Coralville Performing Arts Center.
Oh, wow.
And we perform the following Friday and Saturday, the 12th and the 13th, at the Coralville, brand new, gorgeous theater. And the way that happened was they booked us for 2 nights for Plaid Tidings. And we played there, had a great experience. Everybody was great. The theater is wonderful. We came back, and their managing director, Megan Flanagan, called me the next week and said that we've just got a flood of people who've been coming by to say that Plaid Tidings was the best thing we've ever had in our theater. And she said, is there any chance that we could import more WOB? And we said, sure.
Nice.
And so literally they came back with a proposal for us to bring Cabaret up there. And then if this works, they're interested. In the summer, we're doing Miss Saigon and Annie, the new version, the Reba McEntire version of Annie Get Your Gun. And then we're doing Shrek. And they're working right now to have us bring up both Miss Saigon and Annie Get Your Gun. But Shrek is so late in the summer, we can't stay and do that because everybody has to leave.
Yeah.
But the first two musicals play here and then go up, play here 2 weekends at the Sondheim, and then go up for 2 nights to Coralville, which is a brand new thing for us, which is great fun.
Beautiful. Congratulations, Randy. Seriously, you work really hard on all these musicals and keeping musicals alive in Fairfield. I mean, there are other people who have companies and et cetera. It just seems that you're spot on your interpretations and the way that you're bringing these things, and you always have a twist. It's always great to see your musicals.
Thank you.
This was the 50th episode of Fairfield 2.0. Thank you very much for everybody who's watched, and hang in there because we have a Skype interview with, I'm not going to say, you're going to have to hang in there, but also I may play a little guitar or something at the end of that Skype interview. So this has been very, very special. Dear friend, Randy.
Thank you, Mike, for the support you've always given to our endeavors. Thank you so much.
You guys are amazing. And Jonathan Christopher and Lyric Benson, all the best with your careers. And
I hope you come.
Come see the show.
Come on down.
Come to the Cabaret.
And on that note, thank you again.
Our pleasure.
Of course.
Fairfield, the Skype interview. Let's talk about that for a second or two. My guest is A.J.Croce. Now, that last name may be a little familiar to you because A.J. is the son of Jim Croce. Jim Croce being a pretty major artist with hits like You Don't Mess Around with Jim, Bad Bad Leroy Brown, Operator, I'll Have to Say I Love You in a Song, Time in a Bottle. These are basically the songs of my childhood. I worked for Cashman and West, the producers of the Jim Croce records, when I was a young teenager. And I have an AJ story, just a real quick AJ story, which is when Ingrid Croce, who was Jim's widow, came into the office one day, she brought little AJ with her, and she had to have a meeting with my bosses, Terry Cashman and Tommy West. And I basically ended up being, I'm saying this affectionately, babysitter. I was a babysitter at the time. And AJ was not much further along than being a baby. He was he was 3 years old. So I remember him in one of the offices, the accountant, Michael Graziadei, and he had this little rocking chair in there. So he was getting tired. AJ was getting a little tired, so I took him into the rocking chair, and I kind of rocked him, and he fell asleep in my lap. Of course, he woke up later, and I think he was a little cranky or whatever. AJ, how could you have been so cranky? But he was he was such a cute kid, and this is almost like having family on the show, extended family anyway. So without further ado, and without much more of my endless blathering here, let's get to the A.J. Croce Skype interview. And AJ, if you're watching, thanks again. This was really a sweet thing. Thank you very much. Hey, we are talking with A.J. Croce here on Fairfield 2.0. A.J. Croce, being a recording artist with quite a few albums out there, has a brand new release that takes a couple of different interesting angles that we're going to have A.J. talk about. So it's time for me to stop yapping and to introduce Fairfield and the world to A.J. Not like the world needs to be introduced to him. I think the world already knows about him. But how you doing, A.J.?
I'm doing great, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Oh, we're honored. Thank you so much. Tell us about this. First, let's start with the new project, 12 Tales.
Okay, this is I don't know what I was thinking when I got the idea to do this, but basically what it is I'm traveling around the country. I'm working with 6 different producers. Each producer will record 2 songs. So it's kind of like an old-fashioned single, right?
Yeah.
Called 45. And then I'm releasing 1 song a month through the year of 2013. So starting in January was the first release with Right on Time, and then February was Momentary Lapse, and then just 2 days ago at South by Southwest we released Tarnished and Shining, which is been my favorite so far. So far, the producers are really amazing. And I started with Cowboy Jack Clement, who you may know or you may not. He was the house producer at Sun Records in the 50s. So he's getting up there. He's about 81. And he produced all of that great music. Elvis and Carl Perkins and Johnny Cash and Roy Orbison and Jerry Lee and, you know.
Yeah.
And so then he moved to Nashville and worked with Chet Atkins, and he wrote for some amazing folks. George Jones, he had big hits with George Jones.
Yeah.
Anyhow, I've known him since I was young, and I thought it would be fun to record something with him. So we did. We recorded 2 songs. Then I went a completely different direction and worked with an Irish producer named Kevin Killen, who has been working with, probably most notably, Elvis Costello for the last 25 years or so.
Yeah.
And also with Peter Gabriel and some really, really interesting artists, very diverse, actually.
Yeah.
And then my sort of, the last recording was done about 2.5 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago maybe now, in New Orleans with one of my heroes. And that's Alan Toussaint, who I learned so much from. And being able to work with him was a real thrill because, like I said, you know, I've been listening to his stuff my whole life, and it really influenced my playing and the way that I write and think about music.
Yeah, you had actually right from your first album, it felt like you had there's some sort of a connection, like spiritual or otherwise, to like a New Orleans kind of basics, you know?
There was I've always felt a connection to the music there. I don't know why, I don't know what it was, but it's always been, it's something about being left-handed, I guess, you know, and just loving to be able to play those second line grooves and things that, you know, I mean, it's funny because I grew up sort of listening to that stuff with the old masters like Professor Longhair and Fats Domino and Huey Piano Smith and James Booker and, of course, Toussaint on his stuff. But I also listened to the earlier stuff, too, which is where they got it, like Fats Waller and James P. and Joey L. Morton. I mean, that left-hand stuff, that stride stuff turned into the second line sort of wobble that you get.
Yeah. Now, you also, tell us about the connection with Leon Russell. I
got a call or an email about, 3.5 weeks ago that he was into writing, and we wrote 3 songs real quick. One of them ended up being something that Alan Toussaint picked to produce, and so that'll come out in June. But it looks like we have a fair number of songs going, and as soon as I can have, you know, more than 5 minutes at a piano, we'll continue to write.
Right.
So, you know, it could turn into a record. I don't know. But at this point, it's just a lot of fun.
It is. Well, and it's also a lot of fun. I'll inject myself into this interview right now. It's a lot of fun to watch you over the years and to see how you've grown. You don't know this, but when you were like 3 years old, 4 years old maybe at most, I was working at a company where your dad's producers, we're talking about Jim Croce here, your dad's producers hired me as a kid to work at the office, and your mom, Ingrid Croce, was having some sort of a business meeting at the office, and I was left watching you in Michael Graziadei's office. Michael Graziadei was their accountant, and you were a little sleepy, and I was rocking you in the chair. I think you were about 3 or 4. I can't remember how old.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
and it's like ever since that day, it's like, whatever happened to that kid? No.
Yeah, right.
It was really fun watching you through the years, and in a weird way, it always has felt like you've been extended family.
That's so nice. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it.
Yeah. I also now. All right, let's get back to you. This new project, 12 Tales. We were talking about. We were probably talking what I should have known moments ago.
About the
About
that was a prize that some international songwriting contest.
Yes.
I honestly, it was one of those things. It was like, having a friend sign you up for a scholarship or something and not knowing about it and then finding out that you won it. That was kind of what happened. My manager had sent in a couple songs to this international songwriting competition, and I heard about a month ago that I had won the grand prize.
Right.
So I didn't think it was real at first. I thought it was one of those sort of Nigerian chain letters, and you won. If you just pay $1,000, then we can wire you the rest. It turned out to be all right. No one lost their passport in a foreign country, and I actually did win the prize on a song that I co-wrote with my good friend Steve Poltz.
There you go. Okay. Yeah. And that song is part of this batch of recordings that you've made, right?
It's not. No, it's actually a few years old. It's on an album called Cantos.
Oh.
Came out in 2006, and it was kind of overlooked. There was no. There was radio promotion on that album, and no one picked it, and then things happen like that. Sometimes people hear something in a song, and that's that.
Yeah. Well, by the way, anybody joining us right now, we are talking with A.J.Croce, recording artist. Like I said earlier, quite a few albums out there. I want to ask you, you've had. I don't want to say you're doing different styles from project to project, because you don't. It's more like you're including your knowledge of music, your knowledge of the various genres and etc. as you're recording. It seems like, in other words, what I'm saying is, it seems like you're not limiting yourself to a particular style that you're putting yourself in. It seech like you're exploring all sorts of musical territory.
That's exactly correct. I've always had a real eclectic taste in music, and I think that on some records it may have leaned one way or another. But it's really been my goal for a long time as a writer to be able to find this balance between something that has a great melody, a great hook, and also is very soulful. And so a lot of times when you're writing, you can lean one way or another. It can be more of a soulful thing, and the melody takes a backseat, or the melody leads and the groove of it is secondary to that. And so I've been really trying to find that balance for a long time, and so I think it's really prevalent in this collection of songs, because it's really, hopefully, very soulful pop music.
Right.
In the traditional sense of pop music,
right.
Like the Kinks, I think people hear all kinds of things. They hear what they know in it.
Yeah.
The way everyone hears, music.
Now, regardless of the various producers that you had on the project, do you feel that there's a theme or a line running through the songs on 12 Tales, your new project?
I wouldn't say that there's one theme, and it was just songs that I liked, that I felt like they went together at one point.
Yeah.
Once they're produced and everything goes in different directions, it's really hard to say exactly how cohesive it will be. I mean, that's one of the sort of scary parts of this. Of course, the sort of imaginary 45s that exist, each producer's production,
right,
will be great. Would be a great release as an A and B side, but the reality is, I won't know until it's all recorded.
Yeah.
And I'm sort of traveling around and recording as I go, and touring, and also writing. Like in the case with the Leon Russell songs, the collaboration. We recorded one song that I already had the compositions ready for this record. But if I find something that works better than what I have, then I'm going to go with it.
Nice.
I can say that because my mind is really focused on the whole on the whole project in one respect, and then really focused on each individual song, for periods of time.
Yeah.
Whereas on an album, any album I've ever done, I'm looking at the whole thing. I'm thinking of how it all fits together.
Right.
And of course, I thought about that in the collection of songs. But once you have different producers and you have different players, and you're in a different city, in a different studio with a different engineer, everything changes.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, is your home base still San Diego?
It is. I'm back there from Nashville. Yeah,
Nice.
I moved back from Nashville.
Nice. And you are married with children?
I am, happily.
Nice. And speaking of family, all right, so I will introduce, there's no elephant in the room here. If you're going to have the last name Croce, then I think it's fair game to ask you, I guess you were of course, you were too little to sort of appreciate fully maybe at the time, maybe the impact that your dad had on popular music, but do you have any thoughts about that all these years later? How Jim Croce had sort of fit into the culture? It was like, it almost was perfect timing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know how to answer it. I suppose that I get a sense of it every day that someone recognizes my name and mentions my father. Anyone that's thinking about it, of course, it comes up all the time.
Yeah.
I think it was like, of course, it defined who I was. As a kid, and then I think it still defines who I am to a lot of other people.
Mm-hmm.
It's their reference point. It's a comfortable reference point, and it's hard for anyone who's related to someone who's famous to not have that as a reference point, even if it's Arlo Guthrie.
Yeah.
Who's had a career of his own. He's still Woody's son, and so it's just the nature of our culture and our and the history of music and so many things. But his music really affected a lot of people in a positive way, and I feel lucky to be able to continue in that tradition.
Yeah, yeah. And it is a little hard because you've got folks like Harper Simon, you've got folks. You can go on and on with a lot of the legacies of very very famous or very famous artists or people who have contributed to the culture in large ways. And then it's very hard for the children to kind of get out of the shadow. But I can't remember one time in your whole career when you've really been about age. My point is that you've really been about A.J.Croce. Right from the beginning, it seems like private music, your first couple of albums and on, it was your sound. Yeah. You didn't cater. I mean, maybe some people, if they were Jim Croce fans, maybe they were expecting more Jim Croce type music. You kind of never did that.
No, but it's kind of funny because in a way I always did it. My dad had a bunch of sides to him, and one of the things that he did that we really have in common is was the love of American roots music.
Yeah.
And so you hear it in his songs. You hear Chuck Berry in Rapid Roy. You hear Lieber and Stoller in all the up-tempo music.
Yeah.
That stuff is there.
Yeah.
It's Leroy Brown could have been something the Coasters did.
Yeah.
And Roller Derby Queen could have been as well, and all of these sort of interesting characters were sort of from that R&B tradition that was so popular in Philadelphia, certainly.
Yeah.
And everywhere at that time in the 50s when he grew up.
Yeah. Well, I always felt that your dad's music was its own category. I felt like it was you mentioned R&B. I felt like it was R&B folk.
Yeah, it is kind of because there was a real, I was talking about finding that balance between something that's real soulful and a great melody.
Yeah.
And with his stuff, you really have the up tempo stuff is in that sort of R&B Sam Cooke coasters, late 50s kind of influences. But then the other side of it is this Elizabethan folk thing that you hear on Time in a Bottle and These Dreams and Lover's Cross and all of these songs that have this beautiful, beautiful thing going on that's completely different.
Right.
And so, I may have mentioned it before, but years back, maybe 10 years ago, I was transferring a bunch of his home recordings, and there's lots of them. And it was a whole bunch of songs that I had performed since I was probably 12. Never knew he played them. Never heard this tape before.
Wow.
It wasn't just the regular stuff. It was these obscure songs by Fats Waller. It wasn't Ain't Misbehavin' or Honeysuckle Rose. It was like You're Not the Only Oyster in the Stew, and it was Coffee Blues, and it was by Mississippi John Hurt or whatever. It was one song after another that I performed since I was young, and hearing that he performed them, it was eerie. It gave me chills.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, we have a lot more in common musically than I ever thought.
Yeah.
And it was really a nice thing.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's a connection, and yet another. It's like it's a connection to your dad in an even more intimate way, because it's the love of music together. With the same vision.
Sure.
Nice.
Yeah, and I think since I started playing guitar around 2004 on my records, there's been that definitely changes things, because you have different chordal ideas, and so there's things that where you might find more similarities than you certainly did on the early albums when I just played piano.
Yeah. Now, you, just real quick, we'll just revisit this really quickly. I know that you learned piano as a result of, I guess maybe in conjunction with the fact that you were a little bit debilitated when you were a child, huh?
Yes, I lost my sight when I was 4 years old, and gradually got it back over, at least partially in one eye, over 6 years' time. Yeah. And so during that time, early on, I got turned on to Ray Charles and Stevie Wonder and George Shearing and all these piano players that couldn't see. And so Ray Charles really became my guy, because I just identified with it. And not that I didn't with Stevie too, but it was just all so beautiful. And I also, I played along to the radio. So if it was ELO or Elton John or Bowie or the Stones or the Beatles or the Kinks or whatever it was that might have been on the radio, I was playing along. But something about soul music was like really important to me.
Yeah, yeah. For anybody joining us, we're talking with A.J. Croce, recording artist with a new project, 12 Tales. One of the songs, by the way, I just want to let you know, one of the songs on this album, on this project, kills me. I love this song, Tarnished and Shining.
Thank you so much. It came out just 2 days ago, and this album I'm releasing one song a month. So there's 3 songs on iTunes you can check out, and Tarnished and Shining is my favorite so far, and it's going to be hard to beat. It's just really very honest and autobiographical.
Yeah, nice.
And the arrangements that Alan Toussaint did for it, and the singers, just everyone, it's just beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you play? Do you play these songs on your? I don't even know if it's been launched yet, but you have a radio show with the David Lynch Foundation, don't you?
Yeah, that's starting this month, and that'll be the first song. I'll have a show with Transcendental Music. It starts this month, but I will have sort of theme hours. So it'll be once a month. I'll do a theme hour, and the first one will be New Orleans because of just being down there and that being the song of the month for my release. Right. But we'll play all kinds of music, and it'll be focused on a place or a time or something to that effect.
Nice, beautiful. All right, I have two. I used to have one traditional question. Now I have two traditional questions. The first one, AJ. The first one is what advice do you have for new artists?
Work really hard, I guess, is the best advice that I can give. Practice as hard as you can for as long as you can when you're young. The older I get, the more I recognize how lucky I was to have known what I wanted to do at 12 years old. If I hadn't had those years as a teenager, from the time, even though I was playing from the time I was 5 or 6, really dedicated to practicing and having the time and not having to worry about paying bills and not having to worry about those kind of things, I don't know that I would be able to do what I do.
Yeah.
It really, you really have a moment in your life when you have the opportunity to make that happen. Now, I know a lot of artists who came at it later, and they just had to work doubly hard to make that happen.
Yeah.
But most of my friends have done it all their lives. They've done it since they were kids, and like myself, they were playing in bands at 14, 15, 16, and it just sort of transitioned into it being a career.
Yeah. Nice.
So, yes, work very hard, practice hard, and don't take no for an answer. If you believe in yourself, then you really need to stick to it. On my first record, and I had every benefit of having a name that people recognized and no track record of any sort of failure. So there was nothing but positives in a sense. And yet, my manager and I sent out over 85 cassettes at the time, demos, to 85 different labels before one said yes.
Right. Wow.
And it got even more extreme as I got older because because I was initially put in a genre that I really didn't fit in, because I'm more of a singer-songwriter than anything else. Yet I was put in this sort of jazz blues category.
Yeah.
And so it was a challenge because traditionally that genre just doesn't sell very well.
Right.
So, and so, yeah, I mean, it takes a lot of work, and you have to really believe in what you're doing. And so, yeah, work hard, in both respects.
Nice. AJ, by the way, that was something you had in common with your dad. I believe the masters for You Don't Mess Around with Jim went around. They were trying to sell those to everybody, and everybody passed initially.
They did. Yeah, everyone passed. Everyone passed on You Don't Mess Around with Jim, on Time in a Bottle. I have the original demo that was sent around, and it's pretty much the first record. And if a lot of people have the greatest hits, the first record had those songs: Operator, You Don't Mess Around with Jim, Time in a Bottle. They all got in the top 10. 2 of them got to number 1. And I think there was 5 or maybe 5 on that record that were in the top 10. So just because someone says they don't like it, or they don't hear it, or they don't know what to do with it, you just need to persevere, I think.
Yeah,
you
right.
need to believe in yourself.
Yeah, and you need some people around you too who believe in you also. I think that the synergy of a lot of people with the same focus, I think really benefits, and love. And there has to be some sort of, I really believe in this. I believe that whoever's in your picture has to have your back in a I care for you kind of way also.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I've had years where, for periods of time where I had no manager, no agent. I was kind of unbookable. I couldn't get a record deal. And then there's periods of time where I have a lot of opportunities. And you just have to understand that you take the opportunities when you can.
Right.
You don't get too many of them. So when you do, you take them.
Yeah.
There's always there's always a compromise. There's no career in the world where that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And certainly with music, there's a compromise.
Yep.
Somewhere.
Yeah, especially if you're playing with other musicians, it starts right from there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially if you're playing music and you travel and you have a family, there's a huge compromise.
Yeah.
And so there's all kinds of things. It's not the easiest job. It's certainly not as glamorous as it appears, but I couldn't imagine doing anything else. It's all I really know how to do. It's all I've done since I was a kid.
Nice. Oh, beautiful. Hey, AJ, I have one last question for you, which is, what advice was the best advice ever given to you?
The best advice that I ever got was from a manager who I was meeting with as a possible manager to represent me. And I was probably 21 at the time. And the manager said, asked me, what 3 things outside of music are most important to you? And he said, I don't need to necessarily hear you say them or even know. But he said, write it down because he said, I've worked with a lot of, very successful artists who end up at 50 years old and completely alone. And if you know what you want in life, and if that is okay, then that's okay. But if it's not, then think about the most important things in your life. And I think that was really amazing advice because I had never thought about it. I was 21. I was touring all over. I was getting to play with, Ray Charles and B.B. King and Aretha and James Brown and all of my heroes. And here he comes along and says, well, what do you really want out of life?
Well, I can testify as that 50-year-old of which he describes. It is funny. That's a lesson that I learned too late in life also, I'm afraid. But I was having a great time, hobnobbing and interviewing and working with a lot of artists over the years. And I think in my case, I did compromise a little too much on the side of profession or career to the detriment of having those kind of things, which I now know I valued more, not more, but at least equally all along, which is, family, close friends, a life that matters, a life that's filled with things other than just entertainment-oriented subjects,
Yeah, because part of it becomes work, Definitely a good part of I wish that more of my day was filled with time to be creative. But when you do it professionally, and unless you're enormously successful and you have enough people around you to take on every task that may get in the way of you being creative, you have to do that stuff yourself, a lot of it. And that is to say, plan meetings, figure out what your next 6 months is going to look like, how are you going to tour, what's going to happen, and all of the logistics of those things, even if you have agents and managers, still fall on your shoulders to decide, and you need to, it's part of your life, so it's important for me to make time every day to write, or I'd go nuts.
Yeah, that's and also to kiss your kids and hug your wife and all that type of, all the other stuff, that quality of life stuff.
Yeah, I'm all for it.
I hear it's a good thing.
Yeah.
Hey, AJ, I guess we should be wrapping things up. You've got places to go, people to meet, but I really appreciate the time that you gave us here on Fairfield 2.0 to all of Fairfield, and I guess people who'll be watching this on YouTube, etc. Definitely come back and let's chat again. Let's get an update as far as what's going on, even with the progress on the new album. With tours and stuff like that. it's like I said earlier, it's almost like talking to extended family when I speak with you.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and I'll write to you and let you know as the new stuff comes out, and send it to you, and you can take a listen.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this thing, and as challenging as it is in one way, it's so thrilling to do, and to be able to make music in this way.
Nice. All right. Well, you know what? All the best, AJ. Thank you for coming to Fairfield 2.0, the show. But we also have to have you in Fairfield at some point to maybe do a concert for us at some point. We have plenty of places you can play here.
Oh, I would love to. I would really love to. And so just let me know, and I'll come by.
Nice. All right. All the best on the road and everything, and please come back again, sir.
Thank you so much. Talk to you soon.
All right. See ya. Bye-bye.